So I'm standing in front of the San Francisco Public Library. I guess this is fitting because when I got a camera and first started shooting video a few years ago, I think the first video I took was an exterior of the library here. And, you know, the library doubles as a daytime homeless shelter and insane asylum. And I've shown you some clips of people who hover around me, but that's just a small portion of it. On a daily basis, it's common in this library to hear people yelling and screaming, to hear dogs barking, to hear radios playing, to hear someone watching something on their computer without earphones. The librarians speak loudly. Like there's no sense of what's appropriate in a library that's normal. You know how a library is supposed to be very quiet. And part of their extreme anti-establishmentarianism is in that, you know, they're proud of the fact that they don't care about how loud it is in the library everywhere on a regular basis. And as I said, it doubles as a homeless shelter and insane asylum. And I showed you an example of how some atheist books are stationed directly above the Bibles. And, you know, that's a good example of what a tiny little thing they do that's meant to be invisible to encourage people away from the Catholic faith. You know, if someone went for a Bible, at eye level, the Bibles are about the second shelf from the floor, and then at eye level, there's a row of books about atheism and things that say, you know, these titles that are all about atheism. A shelf, you know, a full shelf right at eye level. Now, there's also a lot of sentiment in here. Of course, everybody knows San Francisco's anti-establishment, but I think the thing is, it's also like really anti-American, and that's kind of the somewhat hidden thing that people don't know about, you know. And so, like I said, it's a daytime homeless shelter, and I'm saying that I ended up in San Francisco intentionally as a result of anti-Christian, anti-American socialist brainwashing that was also intended to turn me gay. That when all of that started with me in Ohio, it's the full intention. It is part of a system that's nationwide that the person will end up here. Okay, and of course the goal is to isolate them first. And I'm going to show you a few other things about the homeless system here in San Francisco. Now I'm standing out in front of the St. Vincent de Paul Society homeless shelter, which is the largest shelter in San Francisco. I think it holds 300 people total, somewhere in that vicinity. You know, when I first moved to San Francisco, I lived out of a van for a couple years, maybe 3 years. I'm losing track. But then I ended up in the homeless system on GA, and I ended up in this building. And again, this is the St. Vincent de Paul Society, which is a Christian organization, obviously. And what's interesting about that is I don't recall there being a single trace of Jesus Christ or God inside this establishment. You know, and you'd think that since it's the biggest one in town, maybe they'd have Mass on Sunday or something like that. But I discussed it with someone, and they said something like, well, because they get federal funds, they can't do that. You know, and it's like, wow, you know, just think about that whole point there. And then I go to church here, and, you know, on an average Saturday at every church in town except St. Patrick's, they're about the third capacity, you know, if that. And now, of course, here on the side of the building, you've got this kind of art that they love so much in San Francisco. And obviously, you know, my situation tells you that there are some strange things going on. But they love blaming it on the U.S. in general. You know, instead of looking at the specific things that are wrong, they just make these kind of, this blanket these blanket kind of statements, and here's, you know, the Statue of Liberty with a chain at her feet, laying down, and says a thing about homeless. And it's an interesting point, because I'm saying that the reason I'm homeless and stuck in this situation is because I've been the subject of anti-American, anti-Christian, socialist brainwashing that also intended to turn me gay. And here we are at the St. Vincent de Paul Society homeless shelter that doesn't have a trace of Jesus Christ in it, and then has this artwork on the side. So that certainly is interesting. And when I was here, when I was living in this shelter, one of the employees, a black gentleman, and another employee or another person in the shelter set me up to say that they lied and said I was smoking in the bathroom, which I wasn't, and they kicked me out. And then I heard that guy, when I went to a hearing about it, after the hearing, I think we were both at the hearing, then after the hearing, he walked by me on the sidewalk, talking to someone on his phone, and he said, he learned a lesson. Yeah, I'm learning a big lesson, aren't I? Now, this is another homeless shelter in San Francisco. This one's called Sanctuary, and it's run by Episcopal Community Service of San Francisco. After I got kicked out of MSC when that idiot set me up, he was an employee of the place, they transferred me into this shelter. And it's actually a little bit nicer. It's much smaller. I don't think it even holds 100 people. Maybe it does. Maybe it is around 100. I forget. But it's much smaller. And, I did see a monk, I think maybe on one or two occasions down in the office area. But otherwise, I didn't see a single trace of Christianity anywhere. And I don't even remember looking at the sign when I came here. I'm looking at it now. It says Episcopal Community Services. But that's it. They have a little library in their spare room here that was full of books and magazines that were mostly feminist slanted. And, of course, they're against Christ and against the Catholic Church. So if you don't have anything to do, you go in there and you grab one of those books. And that's about how things go here. Okay, now this is the Boyd Hotel here in the Tenderloin District in San Francisco. After I'd been at the Sanctuary shelter for about 6 months, one of the counselors came to me and gave me a letter, and he was really cool. He had kind of an apologetic look on his face, and it was a letter saying that I had been moved into an SRO room, and that's what this building is. It's an SRO building, and it's specifically part of the system for people who are on general assistance, like I am. And so they moved me into here, and that was in, I think it was January of 2014. Now, since I've moved into this building, a lot of really strange things have happened. It was earlier this year that I started having these weird manufactured dreams to bait me into pedophilia encounters and gay encounters. There was one with a guy in a military dress uniform taunting me, wearing some kind of back brace with other little plastic things on the back of his arms and legs, gangling his arms around, and he said it's like a clamshell. I have neighbors in the building that have done strange things to torment me, stomping up and down the hallway at 6 a.m., shouting weird things. I had a neighbor right next to me, a guy named Ted, whose room was like something out of Silence of the Lambs, who made all sorts of crazy noise all night long. I have video proof of a lot of this, and plus I had one neighbor in a wheelchair, a guy named Frank, who I was talking to about whether or not he likes pulp in his orange juice, and the next thing you know, we're talking about dimensional travel, and I have confirmation that he actually says some things like that. Now, occasionally, some people come and give presentations here to tenants of the building in the lobby. Okay, sometimes it's a safety meeting. They have those, I think, every other month. I don't know, a fireman comes and gives some stuff. And a couple times since I've been here, a woman came and gave a presentation about a system they have in place to help people in the building get jobs. They have a system in place to help people get jobs to get on their feet. Now, most of the people in this building are overtly insane, okay? They have some form of insanity that is very evident, Okay, and I've got some video of that. I can get all sorts of video of it. My neighbor down the hall, I mean, he's, and he's also possessed. There are others who have behavioral problems. I think some of them are ex-cons. They all have serious personal hygiene problems, etc. And they have this system in place where they'll let you be a fill-in desk clerk. Okay, they'll train you, and then you go and you're on call at first for so many months. And if everything goes well, then they might hire you full time. And when they came and gave a presentation about it the first time, I didn't want to do it because the woman who gave the presentation was Muslim. And she mentioned something about it being associated with the Muslim Center. And then, like, last month, my new social worker suggested that I do it. She suggested it to me again. I'm like, all right, I'll go check it out then, since things are so terrible. So I went to the orientation. They have a group orientation where they tell you about what's going on. And there were about 15 of us there, okay? And right across the street here, you'll see that is the organization that does it, okay? And it's called the Community Housing Partnership, okay? And in the same building, as you can see, there's a mosque, okay? So I went to the orientation, and it lasted about an hour, and it was okay, and it was the same woman. I think her name was Nadija or something. And at the end, she said, okay, this is kind of the first point where we assess you, and, we'll call you later for an interview. And that was about 3 weeks ago, and she hasn't called me, which is no problem at all. I have no interest in being associated with this organization, obviously, since it's clearly tied to this Muslim organization in the same building.
Now, I want to reiterate, the whole reason I put this video together is because the people that started brainwashing me in Ohio did it with the intention that I would end up in San Francisco homeless. Okay? And labeling you insane is a big part of it. Okay? When I was a student at Ohio State, when I was working as a bartender at BW3, there was a guy there named Ron Filippelli, who I'm quite sure was a socialist. I remember we were talking about, he was really into politics. He read the New York Times a lot, and he was actually the person who got me interested in it. And we were at the bar, and people were talking about gun rights, and they were saying something about militias, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I know what the new militia is. It's the Bloods and the Crips." And it's like, wow, okay, Ron. But anyway, he's from San Francisco. He liked talking about how San Francisco was his town, and he lived there for so long before he went to Ohio State. Now, I see people with funny names that have funny stuff in them, and Ron Filippelli sounds like Phil Uphell. Yeah, it's probably just a coincidence. Now, the other thing that I want to mention that I forgot is that while I was staying at MSC, I went down to see the doctor one night. They have kind of a clinic there every night at, I think, 7 p.m. Not every night, certain nights of the week. And it's interns who do it. And I had a cough and a sore throat, and I went down to see him. The guys who looked at me were 2 gay guys, and thankfully there was a straight woman there. And, while they were asking me how my throat felt, one of them managed to say sticky, Okay, it's like, whatever. But that's what they do. Now, the reason I mention it is people have been suggesting to me that I need to volunteer. Okay. And a few years ago, I went and volunteered for an environmental office downtown. And some of the people there started doing the things they do to screw with me, so I stopped doing it. Then this past winter, after I figured out I'd been the subject of anti-Christian brainwashing and went back to church, I contacted Catholic Charities of San Francisco to inquire about volunteer opportunities. This was for the Christmas season when they go out and do some volunteer stuff. And there was one guy who's kind of the point person on it, I forget his name, but I emailed him, and in his email back to me, somehow he managed to include the word sticky. Okay? Now, it's not a coincidence, and I'm telling you that a big part of what they do, in addition to the brainwashing, is to be repulsive. All right? That's how they're moving into the media. That's how I think they're doing it in Catholic organizations like Catholic Charities. Okay? They know that if they do things like that, like use the word sticky and act like really overtly gay, that normal people who were raised well and don't behave in such ways just aren't going to want to be around it. All right, and that's part of what they're doing. You say, well, it's San Francisco. Well, I'm not sure that it's only in San Francisco. I think maybe they're doing the same thing in New York and who knows where else. But it's not a coincidence that I had both of those occasions to hear the word sticky from someone who's obviously gay. Now, the one other thing I want to mention now that I haven't mentioned yet is that there's one other encounter that I remember that, again, is very brief and vague, but like them all, there's one thing that's pretty clear about it. And you say, John, you have all these strange memories of encounters. Well, I'm telling you that Cord Meyer was a CIA guy. You know, it's the CIA is he's a socialist in the CIA. And all my problems with socialists in the CIA. So, at this other encounter, I was sitting at a bar, definitely in New York. Might have been the Bear Bar, not sure. It was two black guys and one or two white guys came and sat down next to me. And they were very cocky and arrogant. And that's the running thread in what's been done to me. And I think that's a CIA thing. You know, they act super cocky and arrogant just to kind of keep you irritated. That's one of the main things they're trying to do to me is keep me frustrated. And that kind of thing does that to you. And they acted like they didn't know me and struck up a conversation. Surely they already knew about me, probably through television. And they started asking me about what I was doing. I told them that I worked in TV and etc. And I very clearly remember one of them saying, so you've done okay in New York, but you know, if you had to go through what black people go through, you never would have done it. You know, and when they said to me, you know, you've done all right here, I'm thinking, well, yeah. You know, I hustled my ass off to graduate from Ohio State. I came to New York with nothing and hustled my ass off. Worked 7 days a week for the first 3 or 4 months that I was here. You know, went around knocking on doors to hand out resumes. Was always ready to give a resume to someone that could possibly get me a job, which is what happened a couple times. You know, I wear my belt up around my waist. You know, I do all the right things that my parents raised me to do, despite all the ways that, you know, you guys tried to fuck me up. And that's how I got on my feet and had a certain amount of success in New York. You know, and, you know, I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And then he said, well, you know, if you'd had to deal with black people to deal with, you never would have done it. You know, and here's the thing about this one. It's possible this is a separate incident than any of the ones I've talked about. It's also possible that it was the same one when they said you'll end up in the gutter. Okay. Not positive about that, but, you know, I could almost see this guy's face. Like, if I saw him, I could probably identify him. That's how clear this one is. Like, the visual of the guy who said that to me, you know, if you were black, you never would have done it. The visual of that is really, really clear. I bet I could ID him, you know. So that's how clear this one is. So there's just a few things I want to add to this. You know, I said that their goal when they started brainwashing me was for me to end up in San Francisco. And who knows how many other people there are that are like that. Now, when I first came here, and since I've been here, there are people who started popping up in my near vicinity, making comments for me to overhear or engaging me in conversation like they've been doing for many years. And one of them was a woman who made a comment about total immersion. Okay? And that's the whole point. You know, it starts in Ohio or wherever. Probably I'd look at the largest universities in the country. You know, that's where they're going to be doing it. I'd look at the top 10 largest universities. I bet they're all there. Kathleen Cachet was associated with Texas Austin. They're in the top 5, I think. You know, before Central Florida came along, it was Ohio State, Texas Austin, and Minnesota. I think were the 3 biggest universities in the country. But there was that, the total immersion thing. Then there was another one where some fag looked at me in a bar and goes, yep, it's a clean slate. You know, and when I started reading about brainwashing, I think maybe in a Scientology book, it said something about a clean slate. You know, that's what they want to do to you. And a big part of what they're doing, and this goes back to that last clip where they said you couldn't have done this and if you had to deal with what black people deal with, is that they want to bring down people who they feel have unfair privilege. Okay, so they think if you're getting your job because of looks and height, and they just say, well, it's not because your parents raised you correctly and you work real hard and you're conscientious and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. And that's a big part of it. And I've heard a lot of commentary about that. A lot of commentary about that. I see it online. I overhear it in San Francisco. Their goal is complete equality and that no unfair privilege, and they would have an employer who cares about their image doesn't have the choice to hire who they want for a specific kind of job. That depends on like visual presentation. That's ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous. So I just wanted to add those few points. That's all that's going on, and I wasn't supposed to remember any of them.